Good day, students. Welcome to SMS216, Lesson 1. First thing you need to do is make sure that you log yourselves into the Blackboard system. As you can see, this is my Blackboard here, and I have 3 courses that I can choose from. Whichever SMS section you're in, feel free to enter into the section. And what you're looking for is either something that looks like course materials as it is here, or perhaps weekly lectures. Whatever your system would have or look like would be something along those lines. So either course materials or weekly assignments, something like that. So I'm going to click on course materials. And for this course, you'll notice that there's a week 1 introduction, and then of course there is a week 2. This is the lesson that we're going to focus on today. I mean, next week you'll focus on week 3 and so on and so forth. But for today, all we need to do is grab this week 2, select it, and once we click inside, there's going to be a lesson start file. What you do not see at this point is this lesson video. Of course, I'm recording it now, so it couldn't be posted, but that's where you would find it once we were completed. What you need to do is ensure that you download the Excel file, open the Excel file, and then on a separate device or a separate monitor, run the lesson and follow along. The lesson would give you specific instructions on how to complete the Excel file. So at this point, I'm going to click the start file, and I'm going to wait for the window to pop up. And in this case, the SMS216 week 2 start file, lesson 1. I'm going to click open with Excel and then click OK. I'm going to drag my window over to this screen so it could be recorded. Once you get to this window, we can then start the lesson. What we have here is an Excel spreadsheet that I've zoomed in to help with your screens in case they're a little bit smaller or you're watching them on your phone. I've actually zoomed in so that you can see things a little bit clearer and a little bit larger than they normally would. You can tell that I've zoomed in by looking at the bottom corner where it says that it's 235% of what it would be regularly. Just wanted to share that with you in the event that you felt that something was wrong with your screen, which it's not. Everything is okay. The other thing I want to draw to your attention is that you may be using a different version of Excel, which is fine. I mean, you can use 2016 or 2019 and you should be okay. The only time it's going to be really different is if you're using, let's say, a Mac version of Excel. The toolbars, ribbons, everything will be different. Buttons will be different. There are also things that do not even work within the Mac environment. So just keep that in mind. You guys should be using the latest software, which I think is 2019, but I don't really have a copy of that here at my home office, so I'm going to make the best of what I have at this point, which is 2016. So again, back to what we're looking at here is an Excel spreadsheet with some very common items on it, nothing too intense. There are some grocery type items. There's some numbers that we're going to manipulate. We're going to do some forecasting, do some basic formulas, and then eventually we will get down here to where you see sheet 2, and we will then go into calculating a payment. So this lesson is the entire lesson that would have been done in the classroom setting. So I'm going to try and go through it as if we were in person, which is going to be great. There are some other videos that I've built and created that break these topics down a bit, so you could also look at those later on. But for this week's focus, you definitely want to follow along with this file, which is available in Blackboard as mentioned earlier. You're going to follow along and work at your own pace and do as basically we would do in a lesson in class. Okay, so let's get started. The first things I want to do is I want to take a look at this title here in A1. Right now it is A1, but part of it is flowing into B1. It looks like it's in both cells, but it's not. So what I need to do here is I need to take this A1, and so when I say take it, I mean left click on it, hold the left click mouse button, and then drag it over to, let's say, E1. So basically I'm going from A1 to E1, and I'm selecting the cells like that. Once they are selected, then I want to go up here on the Home tab under Alignment and click Merge and Center. What that's going to do is it's going to take that title, the heading, merge all 5 cells together as one, and place my title in the middle. It just looks cleaner. It's more of an aesthetic, but it's something that I wanted to do right off the bat. Next thing is I want to just talk about quickly are these bunch of numbers. What we can tell is that the numbers are increasing in some cases and decreasing in other cases. Instead of us sitting here and typing out each number manually, we want to create a data set here in quarter 3 and quarter 4 automatically. And a lot of the time in class when I explain this concept, students always say, but sir, those numbers aren't realistic. How come we're doing it that way? And what I always say as my answer is, we don't need realistic numbers at this point in the course. What we do need is the ability to populate things relatively quickly. Okay, and so I don't really care how these numbers look or if they're realistic, but I do care that they are populated. And I don't feel like typing them all out. So what we're actually doing here is we are demonstrating a tool called the autofill handle. And let me show you how it works. So for example, if I go over here to C6 and I click on C6 and I drag it across, it will duplicate the number that was in C6. And that may work, but not for what we want to do. So what I need to do is I need to erase my mistake. Now I could delete these things, I can overwrite them, I could do many different things to fix what I've done. At the end of the day, because we've noticed that we made this mistake right off the bat, I'm going to do a Control Z. That is the undo action. So Control Z on the keyboard. And now it's like it's never even happened. Perfect. The next thing I want to show you is what I wanted to do in the first place. I wanted to create a sequence. So we've got a 10,000, 11,200, and I need to take these numbers and continue to populate them based on the increase. So here's what I want to see. I want to see that it went from 10,000 to 11,200, and I want to see it go then back up by another 1,200 and another 1,200. Here's what we have to do. We already tried dragging one number and across and it didn't work. What you need to do with the number situation is you need to highlight both. So I've got 10,000 and 11,000. So I've gone left click, hold it, drag it to the right. From here now, I go to the bottom right corner. This is the autofill handle, and I drag it over to column E. And now you'll notice that it's increasing by 1,200s, which is absolutely perfect and what we want to see. I could then do next row and next row and next row and next row, but as you can hear by my voice, that isn't efficient. That's going to take too much time. You could have 1,000 items, and we just don't have the time to do it. So what's the better option? Let me show you. Instead of just highlighting these two numbers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of them like so. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to start with B7, right click, and drag down to C12. Now what it's done is it's given me the entire group of numbers. I can then go to the autofill handle, drag across, and voila, I now have the numbers that I need. Now again, don't get caught up with the fact that these numbers don't look realistic and whatnot. At the end of the day, what we needed to do was to populate this with numbers so that we can run some formulas. Formulas here, formulas all the way down here and across. Okay? And we will also be looking at a couple of formulas there. So this is a very busy spreadsheet. There's a lot going on, but as we take it step by step, and as you watch this video, you could also pause, rewind, watch again, pause, rewind, watch again. That is the beauty of recording the lesson. While we're in class, it sometimes goes too fast and people miss out on the concepts. So this is actually a really beneficial solution to not being in class, and you'll have this resource for quite some time as you continue your studies throughout the semester. So it's a good situation. At this point, what I would like to do is draw your attention to B3 and B4. We're going to talk about different types of functions and formulas. These two functions, today and now, are actually volatile functions. And if you're not quite sure what I'm saying or what that means, I can simplify it for you. Basically, volatile means that whatever the result in these cells that we're going to run a formula for, whatever the result is, you can expect that they will consistently change. So for example, today is today, and I can tell you that today is January 16th, 2021. Now if I run the today function and then I open this file tomorrow, in this cell it would actually say January 17th. It will change based on what is actually the day. So I just wanted to show you the difference between today and now. They are both volatile functions, and I'm going to show you how they work. So what you need to do is click on B3. At this point, you're going to click the equals button on your keyboard. Just remember, all functions, all formulas start with equals. I'm going to click equals as you see there, and then I'm going to type in the name of the function. The name of the function is basically what I just wrote in the description in A3, which is today. And all I'm going to do is an open bracket and a close bracket. What that means now is that Excel is going to look at the function, which is today. It's going to see a bracket, but there are no function arguments inside. It's just an open and closed. That tells the system that this is a volatile function. When I press enter, check the date. January 16th, 2021, which is fantastic. These two functions are very similar, but now does something special. Let's take a look. We're going to type it in. We're going to type equals, now, open brackets, close brackets. And at this point, I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to look at the difference between the two. These are both volatile. One just shows us the date, the specific date for today, and if we opened it tomorrow, it would be tomorrow's date. And this one here also shows you the time. We're not going to focus on this, but as you'll note, as we continue to modify this spreadsheet, this time will automatically update itself as well. So every time we make a change, the date and time will change if it's a different date and time. So it's pretty cool. I just wanted to make sure that we touched on it, and so that you can get a real good idea of the difference between a volatile function, which these two are, and what we're about to do with the totals and the statistical analysis. At this point, what we're going to do is some statistical analysis on our set of data here. So we've got all of these items, as you can see. So we got bread, water, bananas, chips, cheese, milk, and chocolate. So these are the staples that we have, full of vitamins and great things for our bodies. And then we have some sales numbers here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do some calculations and some statistical calculations here at the bottom. So feel free to scroll up and down, left and right in the spreadsheet as you see fit. Okay, so what we need to do now is we're going to go to cell F6. This is the first cell that we're going to total up at this point. And so what we're looking to do is we're looking to total all 4 quarters for bread. To do that, there are many different ways. I mean, we can do simple math, we can do formula that we can build from scratch, that we just, cell reference and things like that. But at the end of the day, one of the things that I'll stress this entire semester is that we need to be efficient. To be efficient, we need to know how to do things quickly using the formulas that they provide for us. So with F6 selected, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're on the Home tab here, and we are going to click AutoSum to the far right. See this little fancy looking E? It's like a Greek alphabet letter. So when you click on it, what's going to happen is it's going to create the formula for you. Notice how it says equals, the formula which is sum, and then B6 to E6. This is considered a range. So B6 to E6 from here to here. We see it in writing and we see it with the dotted lines all the way across. What we do now is we simply press enter. The total for bread comes out to 47,200, which is fine. Now the next step we would do is to figure out how much the total water was. Now we could potentially select F7 and then create an AutoSum. However, that's not the proper way. Well, it's not, I shouldn't say proper, it's going to be a dangerous way because it could run into and lead into trouble. So what we're going to do, which is the most efficient way, is we're going to go back to the first value that we calculated, this total up at the top, and then we are going to drag it down to the bottom. So what this is a relative function. So basically it's saying that 47,200 is related to these numbers here, these four to the left. And so when we drag it down, the system automatically assumes, well, if this is equaled all of these added together, then this must be equal to all of these added together. And so it is a relative reference and it works and everything is perfect. Okay, so that's a really quick and easy way to accurately find the totals for specific items like we have in this example. So that's your total for each of the for the total of the 4 quarters, these ones here. What we're going to do now is we are going to then total how much did we sell in each quarter of all of the items together. So we're going to calculate the sum of these numbers. And in this case, we make sure that B13 is active, and then we're going to click on AutoSum again to ensure we have the right range. And so if you notice, the range is B6 to B12, which is exactly what we're looking for, B6 to B12. Once I verify that's a good range, now I press enter. What I get is 99,000. Perfect. I'm going to do the same process I did over here. I'm going to click on the 99,000 and I'm going to drag across to there. And so now what I've generated is a total for both each quarter and a total broken down for each item. Your grand total, this is for 2020, because you'll notice there's a 2021 here, we're going to see that in a second, but your grand total is 394,554 for all of these items combined. So that's our first step. That's our first statistical analysis that we're going to do. Now we're going to move on to average. And this is a little bit different, and you're going to see why in a second. But just to give you an idea of what average means, well, basically, it is the sum of a group of numbers divided by how many numbers there were. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So our average would be technically the sum of those 7 items divided by 7. Now, we're not going to do that because we're not using a calculator. We are using Microsoft Excel. It is the entire purpose of the software is to make our lives easy, not to have to remember all of those fancy things. But the issue is you need to ensure that you understand the concept of the formula at the very least. Once you know what it is that you're looking for, which we know it is average, now we got to go and figure out how can we calculate it using the software. There are, again, many ways to do an average in the software, but what I want to do is show you a quick and easy way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here to the AutoSum, and I'm going to look at the right side of the button, and there's a drop-down arrow. I'm going to click on it, and what it does is it gives me a whole bunch of common functions that we can use. In this case, there's average. That's what I need. So I click on it and see what happens. What I do notice now is that in cell B14, where my average is supposed to be, everything looks okay, except for one thing. What the range is including is also the total. See how it says B13? This is inaccurate and will give you a wrong result, which if you get a wrong result, you will get fired from your job. So please don't make those kind of easy mistakes. Be very, very careful. I know in the real world, you get fired. In school, you'll lose marks, which they're too easy and you don't want to lose them. So what you need to do is train yourself to always keep an eye on the range. As you noticed, it's incorrect. All you have to do is select the right range. So I'm going to click on B6 and drag down to B12. And so now what I've got is I've got the correct range here, and I can see that it's the correct range. And I'm going to press enter. Perfect. And so now what I see is an average of 14,143. What most people do is they get super excited and then they want to drag the average across. And yes, you can do that, but it's not the most efficient method. What you should do is you should find your average, you should find your min, and you should find your max. And when you find those three, then you can drag it across. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to click on min, so I want B15 to be active. I'm going to go back up to AutoSum to the right side. I'm going to look for min. It's there, which is fantastic. Click it. And then again, I'm going to notice, look at my range. It's wrong. Now it's including the total and average. This is not a good thing. So I need to go back, scroll up to the top, and only select the range that I need, which is B6 to B12, and then press enter. The min is going to return the smallest number in the group, which it did, 5,000. Next step, AutoSum. I'm going to look for max. There he is. I'm going to click on him. Again, the wrong range. I'm trained now to look for it to make sure I don't make a mistake. And I fixed the range to be B6 to B12. And then I'm going to press enter. Perfect. This last one here is not a function in which that you would find easily in the AutoSum area. I want to explain to you what this actually is asking us to do, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense, and that's not a real function based on what's written. What this is asking us to do is to figure out what is the rounded number for this average here. And so what we need to do is we need to average this, round this average to the nearest 1,000. Now, we're just looking at the number. We know if we round it to the nearest 1,000, it's going to drop to 14,000 because it's just shy or just over 14,000. So it's going to round down. But instead of doing it manually, what we need to do is we need to use a function. So where do I go to find it? Well, that's always the million-dollar question. How do I find that function? There are two different ways. There's one way that you can go through the AutoSum button and then you can go and search for more functions. That's one way. Or the other way that I like to show people is simply over here. So this is your formula bar where you can type formulas in, or you can dig deep into the system and find functions that are available to us. So I'm going to click this FX button here. See how it looks FX? Click it. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a whole bunch of functions that I've recently used. What I'm looking for, though, is the round function. So I'm going to type in the word round because it's not here. I don't see it really quickly. So I click up in here and I type the word round and I must press go. If I don't press go, it's going to give me the wrong formula. So I'm going to click go and look what it is. It is a round function. And underneath it tells you what it's going to do. It says it's going to round a number to a specified number of digits. And I'm going to explain that to you in the next step. So I'm going to make sure round is selected and I click OK. What I've done here now is I've opened up a dialog box that is asking me for some information. First of all, it's asking me for the number. And it says, what number do you want to round? Well, based on this, we need to round our average. Our average is located in B14. So it's very important that you don't type in 14,143. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for a cell reference, which is B14, and then I need to tell it by how many digits. Well, the easy way to remember this rule is how many zeros are there in 1,000? There are 3. So if I need to round it to the nearest 1,000, I need to put in here a negative sign, so a minus sign, and the number 3. The 3 represents how many zeros I want to then round to. And in this case, it's 3 because I said to the nearest 1,000. And if you take a look at the result, it is saying 14,000. This is how you know you're on the right track. If your formula result looks correct, then you've done something right. So let's click OK to get it to populate. Perfect. So at this point, we've calculated the average, the minimum, the maximum, and we've rounded the average located in B14. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to highlight the 4 that we've just calculated, and I'm going to drag it to the right all the way to F. And it's going to automatically do all of the math that we need it to do. And you'll notice that round average 14, 14, 14, 14, 14, and then here 56, right? So it's all based on the numbers. Everything is interconnected. It is so important to understand that. It's important to realize that the software is built in a way that allows you to auto recalculate. That's why it's so powerful and so much more useful than just a regular calculator. The next thing that we're going to focus on is the ability to use something called an absolute reference. Basically, what we need to do is forecast 2021's total number. And we can only do a forecast based on an increase or a decrease that we're going to guess based on trend and so on and so forth. In business, they look at last year's numbers, they project growth, or they project that it's going to stay flat or there's going to be a decrease in business. So we need to figure out whether or not our business is going to increase in 2021, and if so, by how much. To do this, we need to use an absolute reference, and I'm going to show you why. Remember when we calculated the total of the quarters for 2020? It went 47 and we dragged it down and it automatically calculated all of the information. It gave us our totals. Unfortunately, 2021 is not over, so we don't know what the number is going to look like. We have to forecast. And if I were to tell you that this business, this company of yours, was going to increase their overall numbers by 10%, we would need to make a calculation to look and see what that number is going to be. So 10% is really easy. If it's 47,200, 10% is 4,720. And then we would add it here and see what it looks like. But that's just too involved. What we want to do, though, is we want to use a one cell reference such as H1 up here, and we want to put in what our increase would be. So a 10% increase would be considered 1.1. 1 always represents 100%. The 0.1 represents 10% more. So this actually means 110%. In order to find out what this number looks like in 2021, based on this increase, we need to do simple math. So what I need to do is I need to go equals here in G6, so I'm typing it in, equals, and I'm going to multiply 47,200, which is F6, and the multiply button is the asterisk, okay? It's the star. Some people get confused and they put a letter X. That's not correct. It is the star that you want to use when you're doing multiply. So I'm doing equals F6 multiplied by H1. Now, what's very important to understand here is that we are eventually going to drag this answer down to the total. The problem is, if we don't make this H1 absolute, when we drag it down, it's going to go to H2 and H3 and H4. And you'll notice that there's nothing there. It's going to create a massive problem. So what you need to do is you need to make H1 absolute, which I've said now about 4 times, but it's very, very important. What absolute means is that it's going to always stay H1. When we drag down, it'll be F6 times H1, it'll be F7 times H1, and F8, and so on and so forth. H1 will not change. To do that, you need to put a $ in front of the H. So this $ means absolute column H, $1, absolute row 1, meaning it will stay constant. It will not change. When I press enter now, you'll notice that it is 51,920. If I drag this down to the 394, which is our total, let me drag it down here, you will see that all the numbers calculated properly. And that is the power of absolute. To see what it looks like behind the scenes, what you need to do is if you go to, let me take a look, I think it's data. Just bear with me here for a second. Actually, hold on a second. It's under formulas. I always mess this up because I never remember where it is. There it is. Okay, so formulas, do you guys see that there? And then if you go over here to the right side, you click on show formulas. And what happens now is that your spreadsheet will only show you your formulas. See how it's the formula? This is relative referencing, and this is absolute referencing. So that is what it does. It shows you not your results, but what is the formula behind the scenes. And as you can tell, by putting the $ in front of the H and the $ in front of the 1 and dragging it down, the H1 stayed the same. Whereas when we just simply drag down the total, it said this is related to this, these are related to this, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very important tool to use, this show formulas button. Or if you know keyboarding, you could also press the shortcuts, which is Control tilde, and that takes you back. Okay, so very, very important. This is a way to show a forecasted number. It's quite impressive. If somebody called you up and said, listen, we're expecting better growth than 10%, we're expecting growth of 30%, well, what you could do is easily now go up here and change that from a 1.1 to a 1.3. 1.3 represents 30% increase. Press enter, and what happens is everything auto recalculates. It is an incredible feature to the software. It's one that I highly recommend that you take some time with and understand it. Moving along to our next step, you'll notice that it has a title called promo ? And what that is referring to is whether or not we should promote the item based on the 2021 forecast. So basically, this is simply a yes or no question. And what we're going to do is we're just going to make up a number. We're basically going to make up a number that says if 2021 is less than 45,000, we want to run a promotion for it. If it's greater than 45,000, then we will put the word no, because we don't need to promote it. Okay, so let me repeat that. What we need to do is we need to write a formula that's going to analyze this 2021 number. If this 2021 number is greater than 45,000, we'll put the word no. If it's less than 45,000, we will put the word yes. To do that, what we need to do is find an if function or create an if function. To do that, we can go to the FX button and we can look for if. Now I know on my computer it's right there, it's available, but if you don't see it on your computer, just type in if in the search box and click go. Once you click go, then you can select if and then you can select OK. What happens is you're going to get a dialog box. In this dialog box, it's asking for your logical test. And what that is meaning is what cell are you looking at and what are you trying to check for in that cell? Well, in this case, I'm checking cell G6. And we need to check whether or not it is less than 45,000. And what I've got here is G6 less than 45,000. And on the right-hand side, it says false. Of course it's false, because if you take a look here, it is greater than 45,000. But not to worry about that at this point. What you do want to worry about is, if it were a true statement, if the test was true, you want to put the word yes, because we do want to promote anything less than 45,000. But if it was false, and in this case it is, you would type no, because you're not running a promo for anything greater than 45,000. There's some logic that really needs to be thought out here, and sometimes you just need to take a step back and just kind of read the question and make sure you get what they're asking. But it's quite simple once you've practiced it more and more. So basically, is this cell less than 45,000? If it is, then we need to put a promotion. We say yes. If not, we put a no because we're not promoting it. This is the proper formula. I'm going to press OK. And what you're going to see, which is what we all expected, was that no, we are not going to do a promotion because it is 61,000, which is greater than 45,000. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to drag that formula down to here. You don't want to include your grand total because that doesn't make any sense. However, take a look. There are only 2 items that fit the criteria. And they are, and I'm going to have to scroll over a little bit, the 2 items that meet the criteria for promoting are water and bananas. Water is at 43 and bananas is at 20. And so therefore, both of those are less than 45,000 and they require a promotion. That is what we use an if statement for. It's really, really easy. It gives you a yes or no, or it gives you one of 2 options based on the mathematics. The last thing that we're going to look at on this spreadsheet, on this specific tab, is the rating in column I. Now let's be clear. When we ran the if statement, it gave us a yes or no. It gave us one of two answers. When you have a situation where two answers is not enough, maybe you need three answers, four answers, 5, 6, 7 different answers, you need to use something a little bit more economical. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use the tool or function called VLOOKUP. If you notice to the right here, columns J and K, I built a VLOOKUP table. And basically, it has three answers instead of two. And so therefore, a VLOOKUP makes more sense to use in this situation. Understanding what this table means is very important. Notice how the table goes from 0 up to 20,000 and then up again to 100,000. So basically it goes from the lowest point to the highest point, and it should always be built in this manner. What this means to the system is, based on a number that we're going to look up, we should be able to provide a word response based on the number. So let's take a look at this in more detail. The number that we want to look up is the 2021 number again. We did it here for the if function, and we're going to do it again for the VLOOKUP. So basically, we need to look at this number and based on this number, provide a rating in the words column over here. This tells me, based on the way it's built, that any number between 0 and 20,000 will give me a poor rating. Anything between 20,000 and 100,000 will give me a good rating. And anything greater than 100,000 will provide the best as a rating. And again, I can take a look at these numbers and find out where they fall manually. I can do that and I can type in poor, best, good, so on and so forth. But that is just thinking small. In the event this was a large grocery store and you had 1,000 items, you don't want to sit there and compare number and then where it falls and what's the word and so on and so forth. You don't want to do that 1,000 times. It doesn't make sense. So we're going to use VLOOKUP as a function to do it for us. And let's do that together now. What I need to do is I need to make sure that I6 is my active cell. That's where I want my first rating to appear. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the FX button. I'm going to click on it and I'm going to search for VLOOKUP. So I'm going to type in VLOOKUP in my search box and then click go. When I find it, it's right there, I'm going to click it and then click OK. And what happens now is we're going to get a dialog box that appears that we need to populate, which is fantastic because it's going to guide us through the process. All the formulas that I show you can be written out manually, but it becomes really complicated. So why make our lives complicated when we can use a framework that is provided? It is asking me right off the bat, what is the value that I'm looking at? Which value in this entire spreadsheet am I looking at to compare with the VLOOKUP table? Well, as mentioned, we are looking up the 61,000 here in G6. We need to take this number and compare it to the table. Once I've decided what number I'm looking at, then I need to tell the system where is the table that we want to compare it to. Where is it located? Well, easy for us. Our table is located here, J2 to K4. So J2 to K4. Now keep in mind though, we do want to drag down this formula to the last item. In order to do that, we need to use absolutes again. So this J2 to K4 needs to become absolute, which means you need to put a $ in front of the J, a $ in front of the 2, a $ in front of the K, and a $ in front of the 4. This will tell the system that when we drag down, this table will always be in the same spot. It's not going to pull itself down. It's going to be absolute. So please, it's a very important step. Do not forget that. When dragging your answers down, you need to have the proper absolute referencing in the formula. The next thing that it's going to do is going to ask us, well, in your table, which column has the word you are looking for? Well, in this case, our table only has 1, 2 columns. And sometimes they'll have 4, 5, 6, 7 columns, but ours is very simplified. It only has 2 columns. Well, column 1 is the number. Well, we don't want to return that. Column 2 is what we're looking for from a results standpoint. Notice it says good already. Look, it's telling you the answer, which is kind of neat. 61,000 falls between 20,000 and 100,000. Therefore, it provides us with a good result. That's so far okay. This last section that it's asking for is called the range lookup. Now, here's the situation. The range lookup is not bolded, which means it's not always necessary. Here's the problem with this. You need to be careful. In this case, we're not going to use it because we are looking for numbers that fall between each category. So anywhere between 0 and 20,000 and anywhere between 20,000 and 100,000. If you're looking for exactly 0 or exactly 20,000 or exactly 100,000, then you would have to spell the word out false. You'd have to type the word false in here. Then it would only look for things that match these exactly. That doesn't work for what we're trying to do, so we leave it blank. There will be times you will need to find something exactly, such as employee number or employee ranking and so on, and then you would have to type the word false in here to make sure it matches exactly. So I just wanted to touch base on that. Even though it doesn't impact us right now and we don't need to use it, there will be times you do. I'm going to click OK and see what happens. Oh, great. Got the word good. Now, if I drag this down, because I use the absolute referencing, it is automatically going to make sure that my formula works all the way down. We have 2 items that are the best because they pass the 100,000 threshold. We don't have any bad products or poor products because they're all over 20,000. Now keep this in mind. This is all based on an increase in 2021 that was 30%. If we go back down to 10% increase, everything else is going to auto recalculate. Let's take a look. I'm going to go back to my increase, which was in H1, and I'm going to put in 1.1 again, and I'm going to press enter. What I want you to see now is how everything is impacted. Now we have an extra item that we need to promo. We also have some goods. We only have 1 best, and now we have a product that is below the threshold that we need, and it's considered a poor product. It's a poor performer. It needs to do better. Okay? So it is really, really important to remember a few things from this sheet that we've worked on so far. And one of the most important things is the absolute referencing, the ability to auto recalculate, and to see how the changes impact other parts of the spreadsheet. The last part of our lesson today is going to be found on sheet 2 here at the bottom. So we just completed sheet 1. Sheet 2 is where we need to go for our last part of the lesson. When we get to sheet 2, we are going to take a look at a payment calculation. This is going to be an introduction to payments. We will have more lessons on this in the near future, but we're just going to introduce the topic at this point. In order to calculate a payment, there are certain things that you need. We're going to start off nice and small, and we're going to start off with purchasing a car. What we need to know in order to purchase a car is first the cost. And I'm just going to throw out a cost for you, and you can follow along. The cost that we're looking at is $30,000. Then you need to know what is it that the bank or the dealership is going to charge you from an interest rate perspective. And we're going to say 2.9%. Notice how it's formatted with a percent symbol already. If you were creating this spreadsheet on your own from scratch, that wouldn't be there. And so you need to make sure that when you type in a percent, you're going to type in 2.9 and then hold shift and hit the percent symbol on your keyboard, which is shift 5. The last thing you need to know in order to calculate a payment, specifically to buy a car, is how long you're going to take to pay the car back. Well, in this case, let's say 5 years. In B7, we are going to calculate the monthly payment for this car. You'll notice that it says MTH to the left, and this is extremely important when calculating payments. You need to know the frequency. You could pay this vehicle weekly, you could pay this vehicle bi-weekly, or you could pay it monthly, which is the most common. So let's take a look and see what the amount would be per month for this car. In order to do it, we need to find the function. So I've got B7, it's selected. I'm going to go up here to FX, and I'm going to search for PMT. PMT is the function, regardless if it's monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, semi-annually, whatever. PMT is the base function that we need. So we type in PMT, click go. At this point, it's going to show up at the top of my list. I'm going to make sure it's selected, and I'm going to click OK. Inside the dialog box that appears, we need to then populate it with our information. So let's do that now. First, it's asking for rate. And what happens is a lot of people get super excited and they want to type in 2.9%. But we can't do that because if the rate changes, then it won't auto recalculate. So we need to be very clear that we need to select the actual cell in which the rate is located. So I'm going to click it, B4. But 2.9% is per year. What we need to do is we need to know what is the rate per month. So we need to take the B4 and we need to divide it by the frequency. And if the frequency is months, then we need to divide it by 12. If the frequency is something like weekly, well, we know there are 52 weeks. You would then divide it by 52. If it was bi-weekly, you would then divide it by 26. We will look at that in our next lesson next week. Number of periods. What we need to do is we need to take a look at the term. Well, the term is in B5, but the term is also years, not months. So we need to figure out how many months would there be in 5 years. Well, you take it and you multiply it by the frequency. So if it's 5 years, you multiply it by 12 because it's monthly. And if you look to the right, you'll notice that there are 60 months in a 5-year period. The next thing is PV. And this means what is your present value of the loan? Now keep in mind, we are borrowing $30,000. We do not have $30,000. So we need to be very careful and we need to put in a negative in this spot here. So it's negative, and our cost, how much are we borrowing, is the cell that we need to select. In this case, we are negative B3, which if you look to the right, it is negative 30,000. And that is because we don't have the money. We're borrowing the money. So it's negative 30,000, but we use the reference, which is negative B3. These last two items are not bold. You notice how these are bold, but these are not, because they may not be needed. In this case, we are purchasing the vehicle. We are not leasing it. So future value is not of importance. Also, this last one here, type, in this case, we're leaving it blank because we're not sure if we're paying it at the beginning of the month or the end of the month. Unless you are told specifically that your payment is at the beginning, you should always leave this blank. If they do tell you it's going to be at the beginning of the month, then you need to put in a 1, which means at the beginning of the period. See, tells you right there. We weren't told anything. We always assume it's left blank. Down here, it shows me a result, which looks pretty good. It looks kind of accurate, so I'm comfortable. I'm going to press OK. Perfect. So now what we've calculated is if we bought this car for $30,000, we didn't put any down payments down, anything like that. We borrowed $30,000, the rate is 2.9%, and it's a 5-year term. Our monthly payment for this vehicle would be $537.73. If you went and said, you know what, I can afford $537, that's not that bad. Maybe I'm going to buy the next model up. Well, if you wanted to see what your payment would look like for the next model up, you can change the number. Let's say the next model was $34,000. You press enter, and now you can see the new payment for the next model up. It actually increased your payment to $609.43. This is why it is so extremely important that when you use this formula, that you use cell references inside so that you can quickly auto recalculate what your payments would look like if things were to change. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I hope you look forward to the lessons to come. And I am glad that they are now recorded for you and available for you on the YouTube site so that you could always watch them and study from them. I look forward to seeing you guys in class. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach me via my email or during our question period each week. Have a great one. Take care.